Nomura International provides financial analysis for all global spaces, and CNBC Africa caught up with CEO Jeremy Bennet at WEF to discuss his thoughts on the negative views of tapering.
I think it's a little overplayed. I think the emerging markets, particularly Africa, you're running a marathon, not a sprint. This is not a 1 year type time horizon. Quantitative easing will have an impact, but actually the tapering will also have an impact on the desirability of investors putting money into Western economies. This is ultimately a source for the best opportunities for capital, and we see a huge amount of interest in Africa, and I don't think that's going to go away on some short-term G20 financial exercise.
So let's touch on your optimism. So many people have disregarded emerging markets and highlighted the slow growth that's coming through from those regions. How do you remain optimistic in a tough environment where so many of these countries are plagued by politics and a variety of other negative impacts?
I sort of love the sentiment of slow growth. I looked at African economic growth, and you start at sort of 11% and you start working down. That's not slow economic growth. There are some parts of Africa that would be desirous of growing faster, but I don't think Africa's going slowly. I mean, I see huge opportunity. You look at the Western world and the growth rates that we have. Japan for the last 20 years. Africa is growing, and it's growing fast. And so, cause for optimism. I mean, with that many young people, increasingly technologically savvy young people coming through the job market, you've got to be optimistic about Africa.
We've also seen several African leaders and leaders from other emerging markets and other economies. What's the reception been like? Clearly, does this send a message that the governments in these emerging economies are taking economic growth very seriously?
It is wonderful. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen so many African leaders in one place ever before, and to have them all at an economic forum, all with a lot of people wanting to talk to them, is testament to where we've come. I grew up in Asia. My first job was in India in 1987. I worked in finance through the growth of Thailand, Indonesia, Hong Kong, Singapore, etc. And I feel Africa's at that point. Maybe even past that growth takeoff point. People are just talking about Africa. It seems to be on everyone's lips, and you wander around Davos and people are really, really interested. I hope you got that in your interviews, but I certainly got that.
I'm really happy to hear your optimistic view. A lot of people are picking up on the Africa story, even though it is at a slow pace. But maybe coming back to Africa, are there lessons perhaps that we can learn from more developed economies as to how to enhance our economic growth? Surely it is a multi-pronged approach, but there must be basics that we can pick up on.
Indeed. Many countries that have grown from the top. You've created very, very wealthy elites. You've created big businesses that concentrated the wealth, and then it's taken quite a long time to trickle down. Again, I think the thing that I like about Africa, with mobile technology, with the kind of, is I'm hoping to see a more inclusive growth. Something that touches a wider group of the population faster than it did in some of the other markets that grew slightly more top-down. And if we get that, then we'll get an inclusive kind of growth across Africa, which is